Welcome to the show, Chris and Melissa.
Thanks. We're so stoked to be here. We love what you guys have created.
Yep. Thank you for having us.
We're glad to have you here for sure.
For sure. Will you two tell us, we just heard your bio, but would you tell us who you are in the world right now and what are you up to?
Yeah, we're Chris and Melissa Smith. We've been married 17 years. We have 5 kids, ages 5 to 15. Our baby just started kindergarten this year, so that's a whole new thing. We keep saying we're testing empty nestering. It's like we have time alone together now for the day. It's weird.
We really like each other so far in empty nesting.
That's good.
Nice.
Yes, and we have I like to invest in real estate, and we have this company called Family Brand that we do out in the world. And then you go ahead.
Yeah, I have a coaching consulting company that I've had for years now. That really is how Family Brand came to be. I was always helping entrepreneurs be really intentional about their brand and what they stood for and the kind of culture they were creating. And I just had this thought one day, like, why don't we do that for families? And then I had the idea to tell Melissa, hey, we should take our family through my business process. And she's like used to my crazy ideas as an entrepreneur. So she's like, okay. So that's how Family Brand came to be. But I still have that coaching consulting company, but really we're stoked about Family Brand.
Awesome.
It's cool.
Yeah, and we're going to zero in on that a bit today.
Sure.
Just how you all do family. And Ellen and I love to just talk to other parents who are really committed to a great partnership as well as a great family. Yeah. You guys seem like that. So
yeah. And I have to say, I don't meet very many families that have 5 kids. I'm one of 5.
Oh, cool.
So when I saw it, I was like, oh my God, they have 5. Like it's always cool to meet other families that are in that situation. I was the second of 5, and we were like all within 9 years. So not too dissimilar from you.
Yeah. When we travel, you go through an airport in these days with 5 kids and
people are like, wow.
Yeah. You don't know what people are thinking. Our kids, as they get older, they notice it too.
Totally.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You guys are like the weird zoo animals or something.
Yeah, seriously.
Totally. Yeah. People always make comments on us, and that was like in the 70s. So yeah.
Where do you come from in terms of your family? Are you siblings of many or?
Yeah, we actually joke about this kind of because I came from a family of 9. I'm the oldest of 9 children. So we were always like getting comments. Like as the oldest, I was very like aware of people commenting on the size of my family. But so I'm the oldest, and then Chris. Okay, you describe.
So I'm the youngest of 6.
Wow.
And there's this book called The Birth Order that's actually really fascinating. I don't know if you guys have read it.
Yeah.
But Melissa started telling me about it. And at first I was like, this is just some guy making stuff up. And then she started reading it to me. And I was like, wow, this actually really makes a lot of sense. And technically the oldest girl in a family marrying the youngest son is supposed to be the best combination, according to his book, for so many reasons.
Wow.
But we kind of defied that because we almost got divorced. And we're like, that birth order book it's not true. It doesn't work.
But it is interesting, like the different dynamics based on birth order, like characteristics that I don't know that he, according to his book, you take on just based completely on your birth order.
Well, it was hilarious. We actually were talking about this yesterday. I was the youngest of 6, but pretty much kind of grew up as an only child.
Mm-hmm. Right.
My siblings were quite older. Melissa was the oldest of 9. And so like an amazing birthday for them was like they would get their own box of like sugary cereal.
Whatever cereal we wanted. It was like,
and no one could touch it.
Yeah.
Totally.
And then I got like my own box of cereal like every week. You know what I mean? Like, so my first birthday of us being married, Melissa gets me a box of cereal. And she's thinking like, oh, this is so awesome.
We'd been married like 2 weeks. Like we just got.
And I was such a brat. Like I was such a punk. Because in my mind, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. That's funny. Like, where's my real presents? And we just talked about that yesterday. We were just dying laughing. Yesterday was Melissa's birthday. So we were just took the day to go, hang out. And we were just reminiscing on funny parts of our marriage. But
oh my God.
That's sweet.
I love it. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Yeah. Can we rewind to, you said you almost got divorced, and Chris, you and I have talked offline about that. And I'm just curious if you're willing, you two, to share a little bit about what was going on when things were hard, and why did you almost get divorced? And then we want to hear about what you did to save it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say from my perspective, when Melissa and I were dating, we really did have this vision of the kind of family we could become. And it was interesting. I don't know if this is normal for a lot of people, but when we were dating, we talked about the kind of parents we could be together and the kind of family we could create together. Like it was like this vision we had. And then we dated quick, got married quick. And then we'd been married probably a year and a half, 2 years before we had our first son.
2.5 years. Yeah.
2.5 years. And then 18 months later, we had our second son. So we had an 18-month-old and a newborn. And I think a lot of it was like, we didn't really know who we were individually, much less trying to create something together. And I think we operated off of a lot of shoulds and supposed tos, just kind of how it's easy to do, like culturally. And I know that for me, I was way more intentional in my business or the businesses I was trying to run than I was like in our marriage and our family. It didn't seem like a creation to me. It just seemed like whatever I had left over, right? I would just give it to this. And
right.
So yeah, we just both found ourselves at a place where we just weren't happy. I was at the lowest point in my life, spiritually, mentally, emotionally. Like I felt like a failure as a husband, as a father, as a provider, as an entrepreneur. I was just really lost. And I was the one that actually was pushing for us to get separated. And we did. And we were like, really, it wasn't like one of those separations where it's like, oh, we're just taking a little break, but things are pretty good. It was like a separation, talking to attorneys, like headed towards the path of divorce. And I'll just say, like, I owe it to Melissa because she just wouldn't give up. And she really showed up as a leader in our marriage and our family when it needed it. And we talk a lot about leadership and like in families. And then we had this amazing marriage counselor too, that he as well really showed up like a leader for us and really challenged us and then helped us, enrolled us into a bigger vision of what could be possible. But yeah, I would say that I was lost personally. I didn't know who I was. What would you add, Melissa?
Yeah, I would add that it was, I guess in my own way, I had gotten married. I'd been 20 when we had gotten married. And I feel like I still had growing up to do too. I think we both did. And at that moment when we found ourselves separated, our newborn, he was like 3 weeks old. So it was just like this really, I mean, I feel like postpartum is really challenging anyway, but then add this on top of it. It was just like a really, really difficult place. But I did feel like, I don't know, I guess I had kind of I kind of lost myself in the whole pursuit of, I had gone to nursing school. I became a nurse and I just had started having babies. And I think I just kind of lost maybe my identity, who I was a bit. And then when it came time to, have a marriage or relationship with Chris, I think we were both a little lost. But I did feel strongly, like, I feel so grateful. Like, I guess I had a lot of cool, like spiritual experiences and just intuition that had me feel like, no, like there's still something here. Like, I'm not ready to give up on it. And then I'll do whatever it takes to see this through. Like, I'm not ready to give up yet. And I think at the time, that's what it took. Like, if I would have given up at that time, like, I think it would have been done. And I think a lot of times, I've actually read this later, like in studies that, if one person, I mean, there's a time to give up. I truly believe that there is. But if in our case, like if one person won't give up, then a lot of times that's what's needed to like kind of get you through until the other person can begin seeing the vision again.
Yeah. She also, I think you stumbled across some research in the darkest of the times. They measured these couples that had really struggled in their marriage and they stayed with them for 5 years, like kept, up to date with them. Of those that stayed married, not all did, but of those that stayed married, over like 85% 5 years later reported being incredibly happy.
Wow. Yeah. Because they got through the hard thing and they learned how and they figured it out or something, right?
Yeah. And part of Melissa, we joke now, part of her was like, wow, like there's hope.
Like that's a big statistic, 85%. Yeah.
But the other part was like, holy crap, I have to stick it out with idiot for 5 years. 5 years. Like, that was the humbling part.
Yeah.
But she was amazing. And I think that is so true. I do think there are marriages that really, I mean, obviously there's marriages that it's healthier that they don't continue on.
Sure.
But I've come to believe through our experience, there's so many marriages that end that I don't think need to. Like if they knew how to fight for it. And if just one person won't give up for a little bit, which I know is asking a lot of that person, but I just think there's a lot of marriages and families that can be saved.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, totally.
Totally. That people, yeah, I would agree. That's enough to say to that. Yeah.
You probably
That's
have
cool.
some questions. I do.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, Chris, were you resistant at first? Like, there's some men, we'll say stereotypically in a marriage where maybe the woman is saying, come on, we can do this. And he's like not wanting to go to therapy. He's not wanting to read the podcast or listen to the book or, vice versa, whatever, he's just like, were you like that or were you pretty willing?
It's funny. We've talked about this. It flipped a couple times. So like right after we were first married, before we even had kids, I could sense that. Another thing that I think is important to say, the only thing we had access to because we didn't know how to work on ourselves. And that was one of our biggest realizations later. Like the most powerful way to create a powerful marriage is be a powerful you. Like, but because we didn't know how to do that, we just tried to fix each other all the time and keep score, which is not good. So in the beginning, I kind of sensed there's something missing. And I actually approached Melissa with, let's go do something. And I think she was resistant from a place of, well, I don't want to speak for you, but from a place of like, well, if we go get help this early on, that means we made a mistake and like we'd be embarrassed and like, what would our family think?
Yeah, I was not. Yeah, I wasn't thinking about. I was just thinking about like what would other people think? Like we just got married.
And then fast forward then it was Melissa who's like, hey, she was the one now leading, right? Like and saying, hey, I really think. And what was interesting is we did go to one marriage counselor. And we both walked out of there kind of like, did we really just pay money for that? Like, it just was not a good experience. Like, the person did not like, I don't know. It didn't seem like they were interested in helping us, but telling us how amazing they were. So then, so then the next time when Melissa was like, I feel really strongly, like I've been praying about it. I've been seeking, like meditating, like, and I found this, I feel really strongly that this marriage counselor is the one we should go to. I was like, I'm not going to go get naked, emotionally again in front of some and pay them to do it to have a horrible experience,
Right.
And she just kept. So honestly, I didn't tell her this till later. Finally, I was like, you know what? Maybe this is actually perfect. I'll go and just sabotage the meeting and just prove to her like this is hopeless. Like we need to stop. That was my mindset going in. Probably not the best mindset going into it. And then the guy, his name's Gordon, actually was just. He was just incredible. Like, he was just a powerful leader. Like he saw us, he listened to us. So I guess I don't know. Was I willing?
Yeah. I mean,
hesitantly, maybe.
Yeah. You went both times, but it was like,
she was definitely leading it.
Yeah. I was setting it up. I was like texting the location and the time to be there and everything.
Another thing that I think is really important that I want to acknowledge Melissa around is I think, unfortunately, most families don't make proactive financial investments into the strengthening of their family. One, because we've never been taught how. It's just not even been available to us. Most of the financial investments we make in the strengthening of our families usually reactive once there's a problem. Rehab, counseling, therapy. And Melissa drained her nursing 401k and our IRAs and paid early penalties to invest in the marriage counseling. And we had no money.
Wow.
Yeah.
And we now look back, that was the greatest financial investment we've ever made.
Wow. That's really cool to hear.
It's very powerful. Yeah. And it's so true that people wait far too long and then it's so much harder to find your way out. And there's so many more people have been impacted and years of patterns and yeah.
Cool. Thanks for letting us in on your story. It's inspiring.
And so it seems like you then were you started to, there definitely is an important piece, it seems like, for both of you around working on yourselves and like that you couldn't move forward in the marriage unless you kind of knew enough about you and what you valued and where you wanted to go. And then you could come up with something together.
Yeah, it's so funny because people ask us like, okay, what was the thing? Like, what was the moment? Like, because you obviously were going to get divorced, and then you didn't just wind up here, you know. And one, it really was like, I think it's so important that if you are struggling in your marriage, but you want to fight for it and you think it's worth fighting for, you got to you got to surround yourself with people who will actually speak possibility in your marriage.
Mm.
Like I'm no judgment against anyone, but if you're struggling in your marriage, I would highly recommend you don't go surround yourself with bitterly divorced people.
Yes. So true.
But I did that almost on purpose so that they would like buy into my story and justify my, but this marriage counselor wouldn't do that. You know, he asked us to tell him our story. We did. And he just looked at both of us and he was like, well, my opinion is you guys have something that's totally worth fighting for.
Yeah.
You guys absolutely, I think, can stay married and be really, really happy. And as simple as that was, both of us just needed to hear that. And we're like, oh, like, well, if he sees it. And then people always ask us, okay, that was that. But then what? We just decided. And I know that sounds so simple.
No, it's not.
But I have a friend who makes a distinction between decision and deciding. And he says, we make lots of decisions, but never decide. Like we make the decision to get healthy, but we never decide to be healthy. And so we had made the decision to get married, but had never decided to be married. And I remember one night after this, Melissa won these tickets to a country music concert off the radio back when you did that kind of stuff. And we had no money. And we went to had a blast at this country music concert, really intimate with some people who are now big country stars. But at the time, no one knew who they were. We just had a blast. And we're sitting out in the parking lot that night. And I really acknowledged to Melissa, like as powerfully as I'd ever done, more powerful than ever done, like, and apologized for like what I'd done and how I'd shown up and how I'd hurt her. And I just said, I am deciding right now that I'm going to be married to you for the rest of my life. And you can count on it. And she said to me, I'm deciding right now that I'm going to be married to you for the rest of my life. And like, there's a lot that went in that, but like everything sprang from that. And I can't tell you how many couples we've talked to, even recently, a couple that's been married over 25 years. And they said like, we've never had that. We've never had that. We've always had issues in our marriage. We've never had that conversation. We've never actually told each other.
Yeah.
We're
I'm not
in
going
this.
anywhere. I'm in this. Yeah.
Right.
And then I think we had this realization of like, for me, I was like, okay, you're pretty dang good as you are. So what if I stop trying to fix you that doesn't need fixing? And I know that I'm not very good where I'm at and I need a lot of fixing. So why don't I just go ahead and and I started investing in myself for the first time ever. I started joining coaching programs and masterminds. And like, I did additional individual sessions with the marriage counselor. And I was like, it's just like this whole new world opened up to me that like, oh, you can just work on yourself and just get better. Like that was just a foreign concept to me.
Right.
And then I'd say even after that though, like I could see, like fast forward, I'm like, I could see the growth that Chris was having and all these new skills and tools that he was gaining. And there's been times, since then where I feel like I'm the one that's like has the growth, like that I'm like, I need to catch up. Like, I don't know. So I think it's ebbed and flowed for both of us, like in different phases of our marriage.
Yeah, that's good to hear because I think sometimes there's a partner that feels behind or someone self-righteously feels ahead.
Right.
Yeah.
You need to do the work like me or something. Right. Yeah. And it's so much more complex than that.
Yeah. I feel like we could ask a lot more questions about your marriage, but I want to transition a little bit to family brand and how I loved how you said that got set up in the beginning that I'm doing this process for businesses to help them get their brand, but why don't families do this? And Ellen and I think are both really curious about that. So maybe you could walk us through like why that could matter to a family and maybe give us a couple tools or tips on how does a family start claiming like, well, this is our way, this is our ecosystem.
This is our culture.
This is our culture. How do we want to do things here? Because we just recently started doing this ourselves. We started asking like, well, what are our, like we kind of have family values, but we'd never written them down. A mission statement. So we started getting into that and it was really fun and we still have more to do. So anyway.
Just making it more overt versus something we just talk about and implement. It's like, including the kids and including like the kids know that there's things that are important to our family and to us. And we talk about values a lot and share them with our kids, but there's something about really making it more just even more concrete and overt and clear.
Yeah.
Powerful.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about the difference between like doing it by default or by design. I think a lot of times we have values by default. We have a culture by default. And sometimes that doesn't mean that doesn't have to be bad. It can be a really great culture, really great values by default, but like that overt by design. Yeah, I think one of the things though that was actually interesting about Melissa and I, even when we were struggling, we always had this desire to be really intentional parents. That was important to us. Like Melissa, when she was little, her mom would find her reading Richard and Linda Eyer's book, like parenting with values. Or what was it?
Yeah, I think it's called Teaching Your Children Values.
Like Melissa was fascinated with it at like 8, 9 years old. Like, oh, like we should teach this stuff. And then I think the fascination for me was I'm the youngest of 6, as I said, and both of my brothers have passed away from addiction and suicide. And then I've lost a nephew to that. I've lost a brother-in-law. I have a sister who's in prison right now for that. So like that was really conscious growing up that like I want to do something to see if I can help change the narrative for my kids.
Yeah.
So we had always talked about that, right? Then I think when we saw that our marriage was on the brink of collapse, and then we were able to fight for it. And then Melissa just had a couple of really powerful spiritual experiences where basically God was like, build my kingdom by building families. So we just had these like, so all of that was kind of already going on. And then I'm driving home from the office one day, and we're trying to be intentional. Like you said, we're trying to teach our kids values. We're trying to talk about culture. And it just like hits me. I'm like, well, I have a framework. Like I help companies do this all the time, to be really intentional on purpose and deliberate about their brand and their identity and their culture. Why don't we just take our family through it? So we just did it as an experiment. I did not expect anything profound or like a business to come out of it, but it really like made a difference in our home. Like it made a difference in our marriage, in our children's lives, in our communication, in their decisions, in the culture. So then we started saying our values every morning as a family, and people would come in and we hung our values up, and people would notice them, be like, hey, what's that? And so at one point I was just like, man, we just branded our family. We just created like a family brand, just like you'd brand a company. And then I was like, family brand. And the domain was taken. So they wanted a bunch of money for it. And I just kept bothering them. And they eventually sold it to me. So we just sat on the domain for a long time. And then Melissa just one day was like, I don't think family brand's just meant for our family. Like, I think it's meant for families all over the world. And so we started this podcast, having no clue how to start a podcast. And then we started a program for families. And that's been the journey we've been on. But it's been really fulfilling to see the difference it can make. So I don't know if you want to add anything. And then I know you guys asked, I'd love to share a couple actionable things that families could do to start thinking about this idea of having a culture and having a brand.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is just the timeline of it all. It was right during, I mean, we had toyed with the idea of bringing this to more families, but it was right during at the beginning of quarantine when we started hearing about how many different struggles like families that we knew personally were having, whether that was in their marriage or with their children. We realized this type of thing is so needed in the world. Like families, I don't know, there's like resources for families, but maybe not in this way where a whole family can come together and develop values, or at least not that we know of. So we were just, I don't know, the timing of it just struck us that like, okay, now is the time.
Well, yeah, and that's our experience has been, there's tons of amazing resources and books on parenting and marriage and relationships. You guys are incredible at that. But we never found anything that like our whole family could do, like as focus on the whole family unit together. And then look, I mean, we were just looking at these issues in society, and I was thinking about the research on families, and it was almost like you could track on a graph, like parallel, that the more breakdown we have in families and the more broken homes and the more we lose sight of family, these issues seem to be directly paralleled, like in an inverse way. And so I was like, I don't think it's too far of a stretch to think that if we want a more happy, more connected, more fulfilled world, it would happen by having more happy, fulfilled, connected families.
Yeah.
Totally.
Like that's the ripple effect, you know? And so all of this was going on. And to Melissa's credit, you know, she's the one that was the mastermind behind the podcast. And then we created a program, basically modified the thing I do in consulting for families. And it's just been awesome to see families go through it.
Yeah, cool. Have you ever thought of going on a relationship journey, kind of like a hero's journey, to become who you are? Have you noticed how intimate relationships push us to bring our truest selves out in the open? Well, if you want to go on a journey, our signature course, Relationship Mastery, formerly known as Deeper, is enrolling, and I want you to come check it out. Okay. Here is what one of our past BIPOC scholarship recipients, Andrea, said about her experience.
The program to me, it's just like, it's real. It's sometimes you see programs like, oh, we're going to give you this and you're just going to fix it. No, this is like real life, which I can totally relate to. I mean, even the instructors are just super transparent, and that's like, they don't act like they're perfect. It's just like, hey, we all learning here, and that I can appreciate. It's well worth it. I actually had talked to someone about it today. She's like, what would you change about it? I was like, man, nothing really. It's such a different experience because it's real and it's actionable things that you can actually do. It's like they give you the tools, and it's like, it's so well worth it. I was like, yo, everybody needs to take this course. I feel like every human being needs this course. Like, this is what should have been in the school. Yes, math is great, science is great, but this right here, this is what you need as a human being to survive and interact and relate to people.
All right. Andrea had an amazing experience. 9 months later, she was a changed human being, eventually got married, wrote us this incredible testimonial, and her favorite quote was, "This shit is deep." And we had a laugh about that throughout the entire training. So, Andrea, thanks again. If you want to come join us, go to relationshipschool.com/relationship mastery or mastery. What do you think is maybe out of everything you do, because obviously we can't get into the whole structure of all of it, but what might be the most important thing that you would recommend a family start with to create their family brand or family culture?
Yeah, the first thing I would actually say is to think about the type of culture you actually want to create, and like by design and with intention, because it won't just happen by accident. And there's this interesting study that's out there in the world of marketing where they basically were trying to prove that the reason why people do business with companies is because they share the same values, not necessarily because of their demographic or anything else, but it's like when we share values. So they did this study to basically see what is humanity's value system. And they interviewed over 500,000 people in all kinds of different countries. And the number one value came back that we share as humanity is belonging. Like, the thing we want more than anything is to feel like we belong.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the biggest things we talk about. You can have all the best values, the best vision statement, the best mission statement, but if you don't create a culture of belonging in your home where each member of the family feels like they're loved and accepted and seen for who they are, kind of doesn't matter.
Right.
It's true.
Yeah.
You could also not, I'm a huge fan of the values. You could also probably not even have defined written values or mission statement or vision statement. But if you really create that culture of belonging,
You could be okay.
you're going to do really good.
Yeah.
So I think that'd be really interesting for families to start with that thought of like, what's the type of culture we're committed to creating in our home, and to realize you can actually create it. You can, it'll take time, but you can by design create a culture in your home that helps you accomplish all the things that are important to you and your family.
Yeah. Love that.
Yeah. I could imagine that, just from what I see and hear out there, that might feel to people like, they might be shocked maybe that, like, is that really enough? Because I feel like parents and families are often they feel like there's so much they have to do and make sure their kids are smart and doing well in school and like have friends and playing sport, like all these development and social kinds of whatever interjects from outside about what you're supposed to be doing to be a good parent. And like, there's something so orienting about belonging, and so simple yet very nuanced and complex and challenging, I think, too. But to me, I hear like, I just feel like, when you say they surveyed, how many thousands of people, belonging is such an inherent, like, primitive mammalian need. Like, we are wired to provide that. Like, it's actually like, I just start to think about like, gosh, getting people back into their human instincts and out of all these pressures and reactive parenting, or just overwhelmed parenting, or like whatever's going on. I imagine that's really orienting, but also kind of unwieldy, because people are like, but how could that ever be enough? But it's like so much more than enough too.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had to that very point, like I hate to say one of our favorite podcast guests, because I love all of our podcast guests, but we had a guest on who our audience just like, bring him back, And his whole life has been studying human development. And he told us about this experience where he and his wife were with his mentor, who's like one of the world's foremost thought leaders in human development. I mean, has dedicated their life to it for decades and decades and decades. And his wife and him, they were expecting their first child, and they were getting ready to go to an event with his mentor, and we're going to have her captive in a car in the back seat for like 30 minutes. And they're like, oh my gosh, now's our chance, right? Like, this woman successfully raised children. She's one of the world's foremost experts and thought leaders in human development. And he said, he pulls out his journal, like ready to like, okay, lay it on me, you know? And he says, I trust you more than anyone with this. What's what do I need to know? Like raising kids. And she chuckles and she goes, when it comes to raising kids, you just got to want them.
Love that.
Yeah.
You have to keep telling what he said after that, because that was the best
And we were
part.
just like, he was like, in some way he was like, that's it. And then he goes, no, that's it. You just have to want them. And they just have to feel wanted. But he said, but it's like, I want you in everything. I want you in your struggles. I want you, when you're not, doing the things that we've taught you to do. I want you when you're difficult, and I want you when you're happy. But it's like, if I can always just want you.
Yeah.
You think about that in the context of a marriage too. It's like, you just want to feel wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's if we can just want each other, if we can just want our kids and we can feel wanted by each other.
Yeah, totally. Speaks to that belonging.
Yeah.
Right up there.
That I'm where I'm supposed to be with the people I'm meant to be with. And this is where I can come with all of, everything I want to celebrate, everything I need help with.
All my messes.
All my shame or my excitement, like all of it. Yeah.
Yeah. I want all of it. Yeah. I want all of you.
Mm-hmm.
I think another cool question that we ask a lot of families to consider at the very, very beginning is, what do you want to be known for as a family? That's a pretty confronting, heavier, wow, that's a big, what do we want to be known for? Because you think about it, you think about big companies or brands that you think about oh yeah, I could kind of guess what I think they're known for. And they've created that.
Yeah.
And it's like, as a family, you could create a brand that is remembered for something. It's like, whether that's present day or years from now, when people speak about our family, what will they say about us? Like, what will we be remembered for?
Mm-hmm.
We like drawing the conclusion, at least I do. If you think about a business owner, like how much effort and intention a business owner puts into these same ideas, like what kind of culture am I creating in my business? Do my employees like showing up for work? Are they engaged? And whatever else, am I developing my people? So a lot of family brand is like taking those ideas about running organizations and like bringing them into like what we feel is the most important organization, which is the family. But a lot of times we don't think of family in that same way.
Yeah. And I think we're aligned with like the value of that kind of intention and putting that kind of thought into your marriage, your parenting, your family, because it's what you're living. It's like, it's the air you're breathing, everybody.
Yeah. And we're also busy and overwhelmed. And then if you're in maybe a mildly or severely dysfunctional family, you're just reacting all the time.
Yeah.
And that's the culture. And then where do you hang your hat on that?
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm loving these orienting principles.
So clear.
Yeah. Keep going. What else?
I think one of the most fun exercises, and this has been for all ages. And by the way, I would encourage you, if you're listening, include your children. Like, sometimes I think parents are like, I don't know if my children will be interested or if they'll understand it. Or our experience is they are interested. They will understand it. And obviously there's certain ages where, you might have to really, really dial it down, but they start getting 7, 8, 9 and above. From our own experience and families, they can be intuitive about it and like have thoughts and ideas and contribute. But a really fun exercise that a lot of families have liked that we have them do in the program is identify 3 brands that you really admire. Now that's different than 3 brands you like, because there's brands I like, but I don't know anything about what they stand for. I might not admire them, but I like their product. So like 3 brands you really admire and why. And then you're like our kids, we moved to Hawaii for a stint and learned to surf. So one of our sons loves Ruka, the surf brand. So we'd let him choose that as his brand. Like, oh, Ruka. It's like, okay, what do you think they stand for? Right? What do you think they're known for? Like, what characteristics do they have that you think would be useful in our family? And so it's really fun. Each member of the family could choose 3, or you could collectively choose 3. But that's what kind of makes it real. Because I think this idea of having a family brand makes sense, but it still feels a little bit like, yeah, but we're not a business. We're not a company,
Yeah.
But for somehow that exercise of like, but there are brands out there in the world I really admire, and there's a reason I admire them. And it's because of the culture they've created. It's because of the things they believe. It's because of the decisions they make. We could actually adopt some of those into our family. And it kind of bridges this gap that, yeah, you can have a brand. Well, you do have a brand, your last name or your family, whatever that is your brand. Again, it's just, are we intentionally creating it? So that's been a really fun exercise. It was even fun for us. Like, In-N-Out Burger was one that all of our kids, it was funny. We had them write them down, and all 7 of us had In-N-Out Burger. We just love In-N-Out Burger. And it wasn't just because we think they make a great burger for like less than what you'd go pay for a really fancy one. It was more though, we've never been in there where someone's been grumpy to us. We've never been in there where someone hasn't been like really, happy to serve us. They always get your order right. Like, so it was as much about the experience as the product. And like, there was just things, I think Yeti was another brand that we really admire as a family, because, we're outdoor. But anyways, it's just a fun.
Yeah. I like it. Cool. Okay.
So yeah, what the type of culture you're committed to creating, what do you want to be known for? The 3 brands that you really admire. Another thing that's cool, like, we help families create a vision statement, but we don't call it a vision statement.
Yeah, I was going to ask like about a mission statement or a vision statement.
Yeah, and the reason we don't, this is a direct carryover from my consulting coaching business I do with companies. I never help them craft like our vision is ... It's we are committed to. Just because we think language really matters and words really matter. And so by saying something like our vision is versus we're committed to, like it carries with it.
Yeah.
And so when you look out into the future, think about like, yeah, what are we really committed to as a family? Like, well, it's out of the frame, but ours is up there, but we are committed to elevate and inspire others. We have talked about that. I mean, we might talk about it once a week, even just in the house. It's like, hey, was that elevating and inspiring? Or when we move to a new area, and we've done some moves recently, it's like, hey, one of the things we're committed to, no matter where we're at in the world, no matter where we move to, is we're committed to elevate and inspire others. And it's kind of a lens that we look through. Like, are we doing that? Are we showing up that way? Are we elevating, inspiring each other, our community around us? But you could just have fun with that exercise and just riff on it. You could say we are committed to, and just riff on a bunch of, what are we committed to becoming? And don't feel like it's don't feel like you can only have it be who you are now. It can be aspirational. Like, we want to grow into this.
Yeah.
And I think once you start, developing that vision, what we don't call it the vision statement, but just any of these values or these statements, they start like creating identity in your family. And I think that's what's the important part about just having things that you talk about sometimes versus having like defined values is like, it can become your identity, and it's something that's you're always orienting back towards and working towards.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. We really want to make sure that values aren't like this list of like do's and don'ts, rights or wrongs. These values are more aspirational, of things that we are striving to become, that like shape our identity and how we see ourselves.
Yeah, something you can live into, like it's ongoingly. So you don't like get there, because you can always inspire and serve others and uplift others. And there's no like, oh, I did that, I'm done, it's over. It's like, oh, that's developing that every day. And I had a couple questions about just leadership, because I feel like I really see parents struggle with leadership. So I have a couple questions about that. Like, something I see is parents really trying to orient around what their kids need. Like, there's a lot of conscious, sensitive parents are really trying to orient around like their kids' feelings or who their kids are. And they sort of start the kids' vicissitudes, that word, like sort of start leading the family in a way. I don't know if you know what I'm speaking to here, but I'm wondering, and then what I see is as time goes on, the parents start to feel like they've sort of lost they've lost their ownership of the family. They've lost themselves. Things don't function the way the parents really want things to. And so I'm thinking about that, about how parents seem to struggle with leadership because they're also trying to be sensitive parents and not be these like, I don't think you're talking about authoritarian parenting, but like, I think people are scared of that. So they go in this other direction. And then the second part of that is I see it being really hard to share leadership for couples. Like that it's so often one person leads here, one person leads here, and that like really having that like two people share power for the family that is theirs together, you know. I feel like that people really haven't seen that done well and don't know how. So I wonder just if you see any of these things with your families and how I imagine this work would reorient people and support them and empower them. But I just wonder if you've seen people struggle with that.
Yeah, I love both points that you're bringing up. I'll speak and then I'll let Chris speak because I know he has stuff to say about this. But to your point of, you know, children and parenting, I think that it is so important that parents see themselves as leaders of a family. I believe that these children are ours to like lead and guide and direct, and that, you know, of course you take into account their feelings and what they're saying. But at the end of the day, I think it is our responsibility as their parents to make decisions and to lead the family. I don't know what else you would add.
Yeah. And I think it's like, I love the terms of like, as a parent, as a leader, it's our job to like advocate for our children, protect our children, defend our children, and while still creating space for them to be who they want to be, which is one of our, you know, you can be who you want to be, and we're going to fight for you. Like, we're going to be advocates for you. Now, we don't want to ever slip into like helicopter parents where we're going to save you, because like there's so much research that shows that leads to anxiety and depression and all kinds of things in kids. We also don't want to be domineering. So we actually teach this in what we call it the cultural operating system. So it's kind of towards the end of the program, we teach families this cultural operating system. And part of the cultural operating system is to be a high challenge, high support parent.
Yeah. Like that.
Because when you're high challenge, low support, you're a tyrant.
Yes.
Yep. You create a lot of stress. When you're a high support, low challenge, you're a helicopter parent who's going to save them from everything. But it's like, no, look, as your parent, I'm here to challenge you more than you've ever been challenged. And I'm here to support you more than you've ever felt supported.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm going to challenge you more than you've ever been challenged is because I believe in you and I see what's possible. And the reason I'm going to support you more than you've ever felt supported is because I love you. And it's shown, like in companies too, that combination of high challenge, high support creates this culture of like belonging and confidence. And like you raise children who love who they are, who believe in who they are, who know who they are. But we had a family recently. We've had a few families over the time who've said, "Oh, I really want to do this, but my teenage son didn't think it sounded fun."
Right, and they bag it because the teenage son.
And I'm always like scratching my head, and I'm like,
"Yeah, who's leading
your dad? Just tell your teenage son we're doing this because I know it's important to our family." You know, there is that point.
Totally.
That's probably one of the most transformational stories we've had through Family Brand, and we just had them on the podcast, Justin and Megan. And what was cool about them, we didn't know them. Like, we didn't know them until they were tagging us on Instagram stories about how they purchased our digital program, hung up their values in their home, like start to finish, never talked to us like that. And we're like, who is this family? And the reason is their family was in crisis, like their 15-year-old son. And they talk about all this on the podcast, but he's struggling with depression to the point of being on suicide watch in a hospital, 24-hour surveillance at 15. And their family was just desperate. And basically, fast forward, they went through Family Brand and said it was a huge part in saving their son's life and creating this new identity as their family and saving their family. However, the part that I loved was he said, when I first went to my boys and said, "Hey, mom, let's do this program," my teenage boys were like, "No way." And he goes, "No, we're doing this." Because to me, part of leadership, it's not by force, but it's like one of our definitions of leadership is enrolling your family into a bigger vision of what's possible than they can see.
Yes.
And sometimes you might have to keep enrolling for a while and challenge and support. But I totally believe it's and I don't want to go like, we can cut this part out of the podcast if I take this down a path you guys don't want to, but like, I also feel like though there's this real risk in the world right now that around leadership and parenting where we're like, it's almost like parents to some degree and their leadership is under attack and their identity and like even words that we're replacing, it's like, and look, if we lose connection to our identity and our roots, we lose, that's who we are, is our roots and our identity. And so, yeah, I just think if there was ever a time to take a bold stand for your family and be a bold, committed leader, and every family's got to find that balance of, every parent, I think, has to try and find their own balance of being a leader and still providing space, which is way easier said than done.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
But
And I like
I
to
love
answer
that.
the second part of your question about like men and women, mothers and fathers. Like, I love that example Chris just shared about that family. It was actually the mom, Megan, who was like, I want to do this for our family. And the dad was actually like,
yeah, even he at first was like, nah.
I don't really want to, but she was like leading the charge on that. And then he realized like, okay, this is really important to my wife. So I'm going to support her. I'm going to get the family on board. So I think that's a really beautiful example of what it might look like to kind of share it in that responsibility. But I do think they are right that it is sometimes hard because it does seem like usually one, spouse or parent will lead and the other will kind of follow. But I think the ideal is that you both are strong leaders, but there is, I think, some give and take though that has to happen also.
Yeah, I think sometimes one of the parents might be the one casting the vision,
Mm-hmm.
and hopefully the other parent can recognize that and be like, okay, I'm gonna support that vision, and then it might be reversed sometimes.
Yeah.
You might not both need to be the ones casting the vision. You might just have to be, oh, mom really wants to do this, my partner really wants to do this. I recognize that. Okay, I'm committed and behind it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. That collaboration is it's not easy for everyone, but it's easier to lead. It's more stable for the family. It's orienting. It's worth working on doing for sure.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Well, I'm aware of the time, folks, and maybe we could wrap up. I'm just really digging this. I'm like excited to do some of these exercises.
Totally. So fun. We love this stuff.
Two questions before I ask, where can people find you? And I always ask every guest one question, the same question, which is, one of our missions here at the Relationship School is to reach a lot of young people, help young people be relationally literate so they can work through the challenges they have in teenage years and beyond. And if I had a room full of 1,000 high school teenagers, say, and I could only teach them, we could only say or teach them one thing about love or relationships or family, and you were whispering in our ear, what would you want us to tell them?
I mean, yeah, for me, this one's easy. For me, I would want you to tell them that they matter, that their life has meaning and purpose, and they don't need to compare themselves to anyone else, which I think at this age, kids are just being fed messages every day that they're not enough, that they're not pretty enough, they're not smart enough, they're not fill in the blank enough. And I just think if kids could love themselves first, their capacity to love someone else would be amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And that honestly is what I was going to say, that to tell them that they have to learn to love themselves. And it sounds like trite. That's not like, I'm not saying like go get your nails done and self-care like that. I'm like, no, get to know yourself and like love yourself deeply. And I think, at least in my own personal journey, that's allowed me to be able to like love others and to like see others like so much more fully.
Yeah, beautiful.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. And where can folks find you? And I know you have a podcast, so maybe you could mention a couple things there.
Yeah, our podcast is called Family Brand, and you should be able to find that on any platform that you prefer listening to. And then we have our website, familybrand.com. And then we're on Instagram too. It's called Our Family Brand, OUR. Would you have anything?
Well, I'd just say if you want to do something kind of fun too as a family, we created a new quiz that's called the Family Culture Quiz. Shocker. But if you go to familybrand.com/quiz, it just literally take you 2 minutes and you can answer some questions, and then it gives you kind of an idea of where you're at. And then it'll automatically email you this really cool resource of what we believe is the number one thing you can do to improve your family culture, regardless of where it currently is. So that's I think it's familybrand.com/quiz.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But we really appreciate you guys having us on and feel honored to be on here with you and share this message.
Yeah.
It's so important. We love what you guys are doing.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Very inspiring.
Thank you for supporting
Inspiring and
families.
uplifting, doing your values.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks a lot, guys. Okay, your action step. I mean, pick one, right, from this podcast. Very practical, tactical advice here on creating a family mission statement, creating family values, having a family meeting, getting together, and what are you about as a family? What do you stand for? And we did this in our home, and it was really, really fun. And Ellen and I did it together first, and then we kind of brought our kids into it, and it ended up being really cool. And it was just clarifying to add texture and to name something that was already going on in our family. Like, we already have a really rad relational culture in our family, but to kind of contextualize it and make it a little more formal was also fun. We still have more work to do. We want to do like a family piece of art. There's more to do here for us, but I'm curious whatever inspired you as a family, create that. And remember, if you're single and you don't have a family yet, this can be a future, visioning. This can be a possibility in the future. Or if you have, remember, a couple as a family. So even if you're not having kids, you too can create, hey, what are our family values? And you can actually use the word family. It's okay. And you might have some cool pets, and that's your whole family. So don't limit this due to any labeling or self-judgments or boxes that we put families in. Okay? Excellent. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Have a beautiful rest of your day, morning, evening, wherever you are, and see you soon. As you know, I've dedicated my life to helping people with their relationships, right? I want to solve this problem so that all of you can work through your differences and have fulfilling, amazing, badass partnerships and relationships, family, coworkers, friends, whoever. And I have trained a ton of relationship coaches, almost 100 certified relationship coaches, to help you specifically work through your relationship challenges. So I want to invite you to a special deal we're offering to the podcast listener, where you can get 50% off your first month of coaching with one of our amazing relationship coaches. Okay, if you're tired of therapy, it feels like that's going around in a circle, or you want to actually set goals and accomplish your relationship goals, hire a relationship coach. Okay, go to relationshipschool.com/get coaching now, and then use the coupon code FIRST50 to get the 50% deal off your first month of relationship coaching. Super psyched to have our amazing coaches serve you and help you get to the next level. Hey, thanks so much for listening. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel. Share one of these videos with a friend. We want to help the planet get their act together around relationships, and you are one of them, so thank you.